I didn't know the woman's name when I first saw her, but I remember the way the light hit her hair, turning it to gold against the gray haze of a New York afternoon, and how my heart stopped when I saw my daughter's small hand in hers. That moment, I thought she was just another kind stranger in the city. I was wrong. She knew something about us, about me, that no stranger should have known. You ever have one of those moments where your life seems to hang on the edge of a single breath? That was me, right there in Central Park, feeling my pulse pound against my ribs as my eyes swept the crowd. If you believe in second chances, in the way fate sometimes weaves impossible threads between people who should never have met, then stick around and maybe give this a like or subscribe, because what I'm about to tell you will make you see the people you pass on the street a little differently. I had been walking with Maya, my 8-year-old, through the winding paths near Bethesda Terrace. She'd been holding my hand, humming some songs she'd learned in school, her small fingers sticky from the ice cream I'd bought her earlier. We'd stopped to watch a street violinist, and I'd turned for just a moment to check a call from my CFO about a looming acquisition. And when I looked back, she was gone. My breath caught in my throat. I scanned the benches, the stairs, the clusters of tourists holding cameras aloft. Every nerve in my body lit up, and the air seemed to thin around me. The noise of the city blurred into one low hum under the sound of my own heartbeat. I started moving, fast, calling her name, my voice sharper than I meant it to be, the way fear twists even tenderness into something urgent. A jogger glanced at me, frowned, but didn't stop. I cut through a group of teenagers taking selfies, barely hearing their complaints. My suit jacket caught on a metal railing as I turned a corner, the fabric tearing, but I didn't stop. And then, there she was, Maya, standing near the edge of the path, her head tilted up toward a tall, elegant woman in a cream coat. The woman was kneeling slightly, so her eyes were level with my daughter's, her hands loose at her sides, her posture calm but intent, like she was keeping Maya anchored to the spot without touching her. And then my brain caught up. Her right hand was holding Maya's left, their fingers intertwined. Relief surged through me so fast I felt dizzy, my knees threatening to give. I forced myself to slow down as I approached, though every instinct screamed to scoop Maya up and hold her close. Maya, I said, my voice tight but steady. She looked at me with a small, nervous smile, the kind kids give when they know they've wandered too far but aren't sure how much trouble they're in. Daddy, she said, and the sound of that word almost undid me. The woman stood, releasing Maya's hand, and turned toward me. Up close, she was even more striking. Sharp cheekbones, a mouth set in a line that was neither quite a smile nor a frown, eyes the precise blue of winter skies after a snowstorm. There was something deliberate about the way she looked at me, like she was studying my face for an answer only I could give. She's fine, the woman said, her voice low and warm, with a faint trace of an accent I couldn't place. I saw her step toward the road, so I thought I'd better hold on until I found her father. Thank you, I managed, already crouching to check Maya over as though a quick visual inspection could prove she hadn't been hurt. You scared me, kiddo, I murmured, brushing her hair back from her face. I was just looking at the pigeons, she said defensively, pointing toward a cluster pecking at breadcrumbs a few yards away. I stood and turned back to the woman, ready to offer a polite goodbye, but she was still watching me in that unsettlingly direct way. And then she said it. She has her mother's eyes. I'd know them anywhere. The words didn't land all at once. For a beat, I thought she must have overheard us talking, or that Maya had said something about Sarah. But the longer I stood there, the more I realized she wasn't guessing. She was certain. I'm sorry, do we know each other? I asked carefully. Her gaze softened, though her posture didn't. Not in the way you think. But I knew her. She didn't have to say Sarah's name. My throat tightened, and something in my chest ached the way it always did when anyone mentioned my late wife. 3 years gone, and the grief still flared like a fresh wound if I let my guard down. I don't understand, I said, my voice dipping without my meaning it to. The woman glanced down at Maya, then back at me, as though measuring what to say in front of her. Perhaps we could talk somewhere quieter, she suggested, her tone not demanding but confident, as if she already knew I'd agree. Everything in me screamed to get Maya away from this stranger, and yet, I couldn't shake the sense that she was no threat, that she knew something important. I hesitated, searching her face for any sign of dissection, but all I saw was a strange, guarded sorrow. Finally, I nodded once, the movement slow. "There's a cafe just across the street," I said. "We can sit where I can keep an eye on Maya." "Of course," she said, as if she'd already planned for that condition. As we walked, Maya skipped a little ahead, humming again, blissfully unaware of the electric tension between me and the woman trailing beside me. Every time I glanced sideways, she seemed to be looking at Maya with a kind of fierce tenderness, like she was memorizing her. And under all my caution, all my unspoken questions, a single thought kept circling back. "Who are you? And what do you know about my wife?" The cafe was one of those narrow, wood-paneled places that seemed to belong to another decade. Brass fixtures, uneven floors, the smell of roasted coffee beans clinging to the air like an old friend. We chose a corner booth where I could position myself so Maya was in full view, sitting at a small table by the window with a cup of hot chocolate the size of her head. She was already drawing in her notebook, tongue poking out in concentration, oblivious to the undercurrent running between me and the woman across from me. She unbuttoned her coat, revealing a tailored navy blouse, the kind of thing that didn't come off a department store rack, and folded her hands neatly on the table. "My name is Victoria Sterling," she said finally, as though that might mean something to me. It did, faintly. I'd read about her in the business pages, the kind of figure who floated in rarefied air, running foundations, and sitting on the boards of companies with more market cap than some countries. "All right," I said, leaning back. "You said you knew my wife." The way she inhaled before answering told me the memory was heavy, the kind that has to be carried carefully. 3 years ago, my son, David, was in the pediatric ICU at Phoenix Children's Hospital, she began. He was 16. Bright. Stubborn. Too good for me, if I'm being honest. He'd been hit by a car. Driver was texting, never even saw him. He survived the impact, but his injuries were catastrophic. She paused, her eyes flicking briefly toward Maya before coming back to me. "Your wife was one of his nurses." 1,000 hospital images flashed in my mind. Sarah in her scrubs, hair tucked back, moving from room to room with a gentle efficiency that could soothe the most terrified child. I tried to picture her with this woman's son, but the image wouldn't quite form. "She was different," Victoria said softly. "Not just in skill, but in the way she saw him. Not as a tragedy in a bed, but as a boy who still had dignity, even when the rest of us were losing hope." Her hands tightened slightly where they rested on the table. In those last weeks, she talked to him about her little girl who loved to draw, about her husband who worked impossible hours as a paramedic but still made it home in time for bedtime stories. She told him about road trips to Flagstaff, about ice cream at odd hours, about love, real love. I felt something twist in my chest. I remembered those conversations too, though Sarah had always been careful about what she brought home. She'd never told me about a boy named David. "She made me a promise," Victoria went on, "that if anything ever happened to her," and she'd said this with that lightness people use when they're trying to pretend they're joking, "she wanted someone to look out for you and Maya, to make sure you were okay." She met my eyes squarely then, and there was nothing performative in her expression. I didn't take her seriously at the time. I should have. When I read her obituary months later, her voice caught, just for a fraction of a second. "I started looking for you." I stared at her, unsure whether to be grateful or unsettled. "You started looking for us?" The phrasing came out sharper than I'd intended. She nodded. "Not in a way that would frighten you. I asked a few contacts in Phoenix, checked hospital records, but I didn't know your financial situation until the other day." My stomach tightened. "And what exactly do you know about my situation?" I asked, keeping my voice level. She didn't flinch. "That you've been trying to cover the gap between what your insurance will pay and what Maya's surgery will cost. That you sold your car, taken out a second mortgage, and still, you're short by more than most people make in a year." Her gaze didn't waver. "And that if you don't find that money soon, you may lose her." I hated the way my pulse spiked. Hated even more that she was right. I was about to shut her down. Thank her for finding Maya. Tell her we'd be fine. But then she leaned in slightly, lowering her voice. "I'm not here to pity you, Marcus. I'm here to keep a promise. Let me help." The words landed like a stone in my chest. Help was a dangerous thing. It could turn into leverage, into a debt you could never repay. But then Maya looked up from her drawing, grinning because she'd managed to sketch a perfect little pigeon. She was so light right now, so unaware of the clock ticking in her own chest. And I thought about Sarah, making promises in a hospital room to a boy she couldn't save. Maybe this was the echo of that promise, reaching me at the last possible moment. Why? I asked finally. It wasn't a challenge, just the only word I could manage. Victoria's expression shifted, something raw surfacing beneath the polish. Because your wife saved my son's last days from being unbearable. Because she gave me more grace than I deserved. Because sometimes the people we save end up saving us in return. She smiled faintly, but it didn't reach her eyes. And because I couldn't save David. But maybe I can save her. She nodded toward Maya, and for a long moment, neither of us spoke. Outside, the winter light was fading, and the street lamps were coming on, halos in the growing dusk. Inside, I felt something give way. Not trust, not yet, but the smallest crack in the wall I'd built since Sarah died. I didn't know if I could let her in, but I knew this. I couldn't walk away from what she was offering without at least hearing her out. We didn't decide that night. Pride is a stubborn thing, especially when it's the only armor you have left. But 2 days later, after Dr. Richardson told me the window for surgery was closing fast, I called Victoria. She didn't hesitate, didn't ask for paperwork or guarantees. She simply said, "Tell me where to send it." By the next morning, the hospital's billing office was cleared, and the operation was scheduled. The day of the surgery, I paced the sterile waiting room until my legs ached. Victoria sat across from me, quiet, her presence steady in a way I hadn't realized I needed. For hours later, Dr. Richardson emerged with a tired but certain smile. "She's going to be fine," he said, and the relief nearly buckled my knees. When Maya finally woke, groggy but grinning, the first thing she whispered was, "Daddy, did Mommy help us?" I glanced at Victoria, who was blinking quickly, and said, "Yes, baby." She did. In the months that followed, Victoria became Aunt Vicky, the kind of family you don't expect but learn you can't imagine living without. We still carried our losses. Me, Sarah, her, David, but they'd become something else now, threads woven into the same fabric. And every so often, when Maya laughs in that unrestrained way children do, I catch Victoria watching her with quiet gratitude, as if she's seeing proof that promises, no matter how unlikely, can keep on living.